In this video, I'm going to talk about the number one reason why you should not drive for Uber and Lyft in 2026 and the biggest thing that is really going to affect drivers. Short answer, because I hate YouTubers that ramble on, jumping right into it, not enough rides to go around. That's the biggest thing. For a lot of different reasons I am going to cover in this video, because like I've said in a lot of videos, to kind of sum them up, if you're a dedicated subscriber, you probably know what I'm going to say. The big 4 or 5 reasons that are going on right now when it comes to drivers. Basically, hate to say it, things getting worse for Uber drivers and Lyft drivers are they don't get paid as much. Huge issue. That's the biggest thing that's going to be a big reoccurring theme throughout this video as well. Goes kind of hand in hand with not enough rides to go around. But one, the pay isn't as good as the way it used to be. 2, Uber and Lyft now takes out a bigger cut of that pay. So not only are you getting paid less at first, but then you take out a bigger chunk of that. 3, there are too many drivers on the road. We will talk about this a lot in the video. 4, things are more expensive. So not only making less, but oil changes, maintenance on your car, gas is more expensive. And then 5, the big 5 big things, and the 5th one being a newer one, self-driving cars, Waymos, Zooks, Baidu. The list goes on and on of these companies, Tesla, and a lot more. And what's going on right now is this all equals up to one big issue. The one big issue is not enough rides to go around, because the big thing that's going to happen in 2026, what worries me when people ask me like, hey Mark, should I drive? That's probably the number one question I get about Uber and Lyft. 1, should you drive? And 2, how much money do you make? On average right now, the average driver here in America makes about $22 an hour, 22 to 23. I'd say it's a bigger spectrum, 20 to 25. Some cities you can make a lot more, some cities a lot less, but about 22 an hour is what you should expect as your average hourly rate at first. Does not count YouTube's cut, does not count maintenance on your car, gas, expenses. Also, the fact that you're an independent contractor. Taxes are not taken out yet, so that's something you have to keep in mind, right? But the big issue, I think, in 2026 is going to be a big one that's going to be a hard-hitting issue for drivers that does go hand in hand with making less money, is the fact that there's not going to be enough rides to go around. Because the first big issue that really started, I found, at the end of 2023, a couple years ago, was there was too many cooks in the kitchen. As you can imagine right now, with the economy not doing the best, finding a job has never been harder in decades. Unemployment's up. A lot of big issues have been arising with people just trying to make ends meet and make money. And when you look at what's going on, a lot of people are saying, shoot, either I have to get a new job or I have to get a second job. Maybe I have to get a third job. Basically, I have to make money in any way I can. What is the easiest job for a lot of people? I hate to say it, driving for Lyft and Uber. Most people have a car. Even if you don't, you can rent one. In addition, I think this is the biggest thing for a lot of people. It's a flexible schedule. As we all know, that's probably the biggest benefit of Lyft and Uber for a lot of people. There's also instant cash outs. I can drive, make $50, immediately cash it out. That $50 is in my bank account, so I can pay off some debt. I can pay off a bill. I can use it for whatever. But the biggest thing is the flexible schedule. So let's say if you have a typical 9-to-5 job, Monday through Friday, well, you can work for Uber and Lyft on Friday and Saturday nights. If let's say you're a bartender that works on Friday and Saturday nights, you could drive during the week. If let's say you just have a random weird schedule, let's say you're here in LA and you are a freelancer, that's just odd pockets of your work, Uber and Lyft can fill those gaps when you're not working. There are a lot of benefits to being a driver, don't get me wrong. But I think the big thing though, which is kind of a double-edged sword, is because of so many benefits, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, you know what? Maybe I'll drive for Lyft and Uber. Maybe do it full-time. Maybe do it part-time. Maybe do it semi-part-time. Maybe do it basically how and whenever I want. And the issue with this, that again really started in 2023 / really kind of became prevalent in 2024, is there were too many drivers on the road. That there's, if you think about it, only a finite amount of rides to go around. And when you look at what's going on with the landscape of Lyft and Uber, yes, there are more people than ever before ordering Ubers and Lyfts. This is a good thing. There are more rides happening every single day, but there's also more drivers happening every single day. And so the first thing I really want to talk about when it comes to this big issue with finite amount of rides to go around is it is getting tricky. And I've talked before in other videos about what I'm going to call the peak hour paradox. The peak hour paradox being the best times to make money with Uber and Lyft. This is like Uber and Lyft 101. Morning and evening commutes, 7 to 9 a.m., 5 to 7 p.m., and Friday and Saturday nights, if you want to even start around the pregame hours, as I call it, maybe 7 or 8 p.m. till 3 or 4 a.m., it's a good time to drive on Friday and Saturday nights. But the issue is, everyone thinks that. I mean, understandably so, because it's partly true. But now, as we're getting to 2026, maybe not. I've had drivers tell me here in LA that they actually make more money on a Wednesday or Thursday night because everybody goes out to drive on a Friday night. Every driver goes out to drive because like, hey, we're going to make the most amount of money. And then it almost becomes this congestion of too many drivers on the road. Even more so, maybe surges just aren't what they used to be. There's a lot of different factors. So the first thing is just general, more people are driving. But the second big whammy, which I've mentioned in a lot of videos, for my dedicated subscribers, you've seen more and more videos about it, Waymo. I think I've done 40 videos about Waymo so far on this channel and counting. Waymo's spreading everywhere. And I feel like, I don't know what it was, but like maybe in the past month, it felt like the awesome boom, Waymo just really started to take off because before it was like Los Angeles, Phoenix, and San Francisco. Then they're like, all right, Atlanta and Austin. And then they started looking at New York, but then Washington, D.C., but then Philadelphia, but then Chicago, but then Denver, but then Seattle. And now they're targeting smaller cities like Orlando. Like obviously Miami is already coming into play, but cities like Orlando, more of a smaller city, not a major city, but a smaller city still known. San Antonio, San Diego, right? These cities that you wouldn't look at as major cities, like a lot of people don't even know San Antonio exists, right? It's about, south of Austin. I think it's like maybe an hour or two. I can't remember exactly, but San Antonio is a very interesting one, right? So I think what they're doing is, my guess, targeting a major city like Miami, Los Angeles, and then doing what's the next biggest city near it. So Austin to San Antonio is almost like Los Angeles to San Diego, which is almost like Miami to Orlando in the general proximity in a sense, right? Waymo's blowing up at an insanely rapid rate. And what I've said in a lot of videos is the better Waymo gets, the better Waymo gets, right? So now that Waymo's really figured out their secret sauce, once they go into a new city, it is lightning fast. Once they decide to go into a new city, before, there's probably a lot of programming issues, a lot of technical issues, a lot of engineering issues, a lot of even more so legal issues. Like, okay, legally, is the city and the council and the population going to trust the self-driving car on the road? What if something happens? But now, because Waymo's, for better or for worse, depending on what side you are, and I think there's pros and cons on both sides, for better or for worse, because Waymo's now so common, more and more legal entities are kind of accepting it, right? Because if you think about it, back in the day, saying, hey, we want to put self-driving cars in your city, a lot of lawmakers and legislation would say, whoa, wait, what? Are you sure? Now they're like, oh yeah, Waymo, we've already heard about you. We already know about you. So, and I'm making something up, but it's almost like for every, let's say last month, I'm making something up. Let's say Waymo started in 5 new cities. Well, in the next month, Waymo's going to start in 7 new cities. And then in the next month, Waymo's going to start in 9 new cities. And the list is going to continue getting faster and faster of how many new cities Waymo's getting in every single month. Not just that, but Zoox. In case you don't know, Zoox is another self-driving car company. Look at it as Waymo's competitor, right? Before you had taxis versus Ubers and Lyfts, then you split that up into now just Uber and Lyft. Then it was Uber and Lyft versus Waymo, and now we're getting even more into the future of Waymo versus Zoox, or versus Apollo Go, which is by Baidu. Or Tesla is starting to come into the game because they already have their fleet. Once they maybe figure out their secret sauce, maybe Tesla's going to almost come out of nowhere. And, so now you have self-driving car companies competing with self-driving car companies. And when you look at what's happening, it all equals one big thing: less and less rides to go around. And I think that is the biggest thing, is these 2 big factors. I might even say 3, but really 2 that, 1, there are too many new drivers signing up. And what I mean by that is, with the economy getting worse and everything, I think more and more people are just, in general, with the economy getting worse, signing up to drive. The second thing, which I've not really talked about in any video, but I do want to mention it here, which again, these 2 points are kind of similar to each other, is regarding Ubers and Lyfts, there are now a lot of people not really going out. Like, if you look at Gen Z, Gen Z drinks way less than any generation pretty much in history. Why do most people take an Uber or Lyft on a Friday night? To go out drinking. And I'm not condoning it, so I want to stress this point. But if you look at like the way a lot of people think, okay, you shouldn't drink and drive. That's very universal. But a lot of people, and again, I'm not condoning this in any way, feel it's okay or safer to get high and drive, to smoke weed and drive. And because Gen Z is bigger on cannabis and bigger on just smoking weed, a lot of them are saying, wait a minute, if we are going to go out, why drink when it's more expensive? I just don't care to drink. It's bad for your health. That's more of a millennial thing. I'm going to smoke weed and we'll drive to the venue. I'll drive us. Or maybe we just don't go out because things are too expensive now. Like if you look at it, the minimum wage here in California is like $17. It's not uncommon to go to a bar, next you get a vodka soda, and the bartender's like $14. And you're like, wait, I asked for the cheapest vodka. And they're like, yeah, this is the cheapest vodka, $14. And then you're like, okay, $14 plus tax plus tip, 17. So I'm like, wait a minute. I just worked an hour to get this bottom shelf vodka soda that might make me feel good or give me a buzz for an hour and a half. That's a big thing. And that's a big thing I've not really talked about in any video, but like, I think the lack of just going out means there's less rides to go around too. And then thirdly, of course, the big one is self-driving cars. And you look at these kind of the trifecta of what's going on, you realize that rides are becoming, and I don't want to word this in a super intense way. And again, my goal for videos like these that I make isn't to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's not to be one of those YouTubers being like, Uber Lyft is ending. I'm not trying to create some unnecessary hype to get clicks, but I do want to be transparent. And I think when you look at all these things to go around, and again, this sounds like a bit of a maybe intense statement to say, but I think more and more rides are becoming more finite, and I would say a precious commodity. But it's becoming more and more of a thing of like, ooh, wow, okay, I hope I get enough rides today. And I know some people have commented on this channel. I've had drivers comment saying, hey, Mark, I went out today to drive. I didn't get enough. Or now I have to work 40 hours to make what I used to make in 30 hours. Or I've had drivers tell me like, yeah, before, in case you didn't know, with Uber and Lyft, back in the day, they've changed it. But back in the day, you would do a ride, stop it. It'd be like, start the ride, stop it. You sit there and wait 5 or 10 seconds. You get a new ride, boom. Then Uber and Lyft changed it to what I'm calling like an overlapping feature. When while you're driving, you'll get alerts saying, hey, do you want to accept a new ride? So the way Uber and Lyft did this, which I thought was very smart, is you'd always have another ride in queue. So as opposed to being a static start and stop ride per se, you'd always have another one kind of ready to go, if that makes sense. But now it's almost like even though the overlapping feature is obviously still there, it's almost like now the way drivers are driving is similar to the way it used to be, where you drive, you do a ride, you sit there, you wait a few minutes. Oh, there's a new ride. Okay, boom, let me do it. And here's another big issue when you look at there being finite, amount of rides to go around. People are not going out. Too many drivers on the road. Self-driving cars is, when you look at where Waymo's going, the first big cities were the major ones. San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Austin, Boston, all these different cities are the major ones. And the irony is, the best places to drive are major cities. Most traffic, usually highest surges, all these different things. And it's becoming, again, a bigger even paradox, which I've said in some videos. If you look at some of my pro tip videos 3 or 4 years ago, some of my biggest pro tips were, hey, if you want to make a lot of money, and say you're on the outskirts of your major city, do that drive. Like one of my cousin actually was the first one who ever told me about driving for Lyft and Uber. That was the first one who really ever suggested it to me. He had to commute about an hour into Boston, hour out of Boston. But his mindset was like, look, I could stay and drive in my city. He was in the North Shore. I can stay and drive in my city, but I'm not going to make that much money. And yeah, I have to commute an hour into Boston. Sometimes an hour and a half because of traffic, but the commute's worth it because I'm going to make way more money. Now, I don't know, because as you can imagine, with Waymo targeting all these big cities, and let's be honest too, people in big cities have a lot more money. People are now preferring Waymos. I've already talked about this in a lot of different videos, that right now it's been shown that although Waymos are on average typically more expensive than Ubers and Lyfts, people are still preferring them. And in places like LA and San Fran, people have money and they're like, hey, I have no problem spending 10 extra bucks to be in a Waymo. I want it to myself. I have privacy. I don't have to deal with potentially a rude Uber driver or Lyft driver. I feel safer in the Waymo on all these different factors. So if all these things come into play, not only do I feel about self-driving cars just taking away these rides, but people are preferring them. It's not like Uber or Lyft back in the day, With Uber or Lyft, when you look at Uber versus Lyft, it was more of just like a whichever one's cheaper. That was the way most people operated. Some people did prefer Lyft. On average, I think most people preferred Lyft. But back in the day, it was more of like, do I want to do Uber or Lyft? I'll just pick whatever one's cheaper. Now, Waymo's almost seen as like Uber and Lyft versus Waymo because Waymo's a whole different experience. And in addition to, like I've said, a lot of people are saying, hey, you know what? I'd much rather be in a Waymo. I'd much rather be in a Waymo than Uber or Lyft in general, and they're more preferred, which means if people have the option, once they start taking Waymos, it does seem based off the statistics, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but it's almost like 7 or 8 times out of 10, they're going to prefer the Waymo. So not only is there less rides to go around and things are more finite and self-driving cars are existing, but people are flocking to the Waymos bigger than ever before. And it's not like for drivers, there's another option. Let's say there was a third ride-sharing company, and it was Uber versus Lyft versus Joe Schmo's ride-sharing company. That would be a little different because then it's like, well, people don't care. It's the same experience between the three. They're going to pick whichever one's cheapest, like say the Joe Schmo one, whatever. But as a driver, you can also drive for Joe Schmo's. With Waymo, it cuts all the human drivers out. All the human drivers out. And again, I think this is what's going to be, I think, more of a prevalent issue in 2026 than ever before. With one, basically the economy getting bad. One, people signing up more than ever to drive because they need the money. And Lyft and Uber, if you look at it, is really the best secondary job or third job. It's the best extra job on top of whatever you're doing. So a lot of people are signing up to drive. Second thing, people are just not going out as much anymore. Like I said, the economy is a big factor of this kind of odd when we have more drivers signing up being like, hey, we want work. And a lot of people saying, hey, we are broke. We don't want to go out. We don't want to spend money on drinks. And like I said, too, again, talking very transparently about the logistics, with Gen Z not really caring about drinking, that I think, love it or hate it, it's kind of interesting. I think alcohol, if let's say prohibition happened and there was no alcohol ever in America, I feel like the earnings of Uber and Lyft drivers would tank. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, there's more reasons to take an Uber or Lyft than just because you're drinking. But I feel like that really was the biggest selling point for a lot of people. Like, wait a minute, I don't have to worry about where to park my car, how to get to my friend's place, how to get a taxi home. Like, for anyone who remembers, being out in Boston, I remember when I graduated college in like 2012, getting a taxi was cutthroat. I saw fights happen, brawls would happen. You would sometimes, argue being like, look, I'll give you $40. And then some guys like, wait, taxi driver, I'll give you $60. I'm with 2 of my friends, we'll give you $60. And then you have a bidding war and the taxi driver's like, oh, this is great, right? So getting home in Boston was a nightmare. And, I think a big component, again, of Lyft and Uber blowing up was really alcohol. But with Gen Z not really drinking that much and Gen Alpha probably following suit with them, it's almost like drinking is almost like the new smoking in a sense. A lot of people are either driving themselves or just not going out. It's just too expensive. Again, like I said, why spend 15? Like I went to a bar. It's an okay bar. It's kind of flashy here in LA called EPLP. I got with me and one of my friends. I got 2 shots of vodka, and this is a very common story. I got 2 shots of vodka. Both were New Amsterdam. In case you know, New Amsterdam is like bottom shelf vodka. Came to $40. It was $20 for a shot of their worst vodka. And I almost didn't want to pay, but I was like, okay. But I was like, I used to bartend. I always tip. So I gave him 20% as I typically do. I basically spent $50. And at that point, I'm like, think of how much some people have to work just to make $50 for me to just go like this. And I'm like, oh, I feel buzzed now for an hour. Like, right? These are the kind of the situations that Gen Z is saying we're done with drinking. And I know that sounds like a random thing to bring up in this video or maybe like a bit of more of a side tangent, but those kind of drinking economics, if I call it like that, come into play with people wanting to take Ubers and Lyfts, which is why people are not ordering them as much as before. Now, like I said, there are more rides happening every day than ever before. That is true. The amount of Uber and Lyft rides are increasing. So that is a good thing. But I do wonder if the rate of increase isn't as big as before. I do wonder that. I haven't seen any statistics yet that has done a full analysis, but that's a big issue. And then thirdly, like I said, self-driving cars. And it's not about, I don't think this is a big thing I want to stress in this video. It's not about self-driving cars being on the map in general. It's not about people saying, should I take Uber? Should I take a Waymo? It's not necessarily about that. It's about that once Waymo penetrates a new market, that's all people want to take. Same thing with Zoox. And it could be because you could argue, is it because of social media? Is it because it's flashy? Is it a shiny new toy? Is it because they just want to try something new? You could argue, or just do they just want to be alone? A lot of different factors, but this all equals up to one thing. I think in 2026, it's going to be harder and harder for rides to go around. And then when you look at all these things I've already mentioned in the beginning of the video, less pay, Uber and Lyft taking out a bigger cut, of course, too many drivers being on the road, things being more expensive, it's equaling a very tricky thing that, yes, what Uber and Lyft tries to do, and I'll do a dedicated video about this, what they try to do is say, hey, on average, you can make 30 an hour driving for Lyft. But then there's that asterisk, that annoying asterisk. And when you look at it, it says active hours. What that means is they're kind of using, I'm going to use like a math loophole, if I word it like that, where active hours means when you're driving. And yeah, I'll be honest, that would make some sense to me. In some cities, I think maybe you could probably make close to 30, 35 an hour active hours, meaning when you're driving. But when you're not driving, you're making nothing. You're making nothing. And the amount of drivers that are having these bigger gaps between rides, I think has become more and more prevalent. It's going to be harder and harder for you to get rides. And yeah, maybe if you do get rides, you do make a good amount of money for that ride. Maybe. But the biggest thing is the waiting time. Like you might make 30 or 35 an hour active time, but then when you look at the full amount of hours you worked, it's probably going to be maybe 10 or 15, not to mention taxes, inflation, and all this other stuff. And I hate to say it, that is the biggest thing that really worries me when it comes to all the people trying to drive for Uber and Lyft in 2026, that rides are going to become, I think, a lot trickier to go around.